Hey everyone, welcome to Dinner Church. Good to see you. Matt, Vincent, Dean Morris, who you probably know, and we have a real special guest with us, Joanna LaFleur.
Hey.
Who's been a friend we've known each other for a number of years, and in different kind of ways.
And a number of minutes.
And a number of minutes. But can I say it's been fabulous?
The best few minutes.
Right? The best few minutes.
And Joanna is the executive director of Word Made Digital. And why don't you just give a little bit on what that is?
Yeah, we do content and consulting to help churches and Christian charities with communication. There's a lot of C words, but yeah, I always say that the church doesn't just carry good news, it's the best news in the world. And so we should be the best communicators in the world if we have the most important thing to talk about, but we often suck. And so I'm trying to help churches and Christian organizations through my little team of staff. We help them do communication better in a digital world.
That's awesome.
And we're so glad that you're here with us. As we're starting a Sermon on the Mount series, so we're really excited about this one. Because if you were to zone in Scripture and kind of keep going to a point on what's most important, some of us might say that these few chapters, known as the Sermon on the Mount, are like the point of Jesus' teaching. It really boils things down to, if you want to know what the teaching of Jesus looks like and how we work it out, this is where we need to hang out. So, excited. Let me give a little primer here.
Okay.
So, at the University of Toronto, where I did my undergrad, I minored in history. I thought I was going to be a high school teacher, so it would be one of my teachables. And for the first couple years of history, like there's so much to memorize in all the courses, and I always found like it's going to be so hard when the exams come. I don't know what they're going to ask, and it was all like long form essays for the exams, and like to remember enough to hopefully get the right question on the final.
Yeah.
Then someone said, "Oh, like you're an idiot. If you go to the library, you can look up all the past exams for those courses." And I was like, are you kidding me? So for the next few years, anytime I had a course, so I did a Caribbean history course. I also did a history of espionage, which was amazing.
That sounds
But I would go and I'd look up the past exams, I'd look at the last 5 years, and I'd try to find common questions that showed up consistently, and I would only study that content. A little bit of rolling the dice, hoping that if it was important enough before, it would show up, and it almost always did. So it really helped zone in my thinking. So what it did is it allowed me throughout the semester to really only pay attention to certain things as they came up. Because I was like, these are the important ones, I'm taking notes, I'm remembering this stuff.
Right.
All that to say, what we're looking at today in the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount is at the very end of this, I know it's weird to skip ahead, but at the very end of this, Jesus gives these comments and he says, if you want to be wise or foolish, considered a wise person or a foolish person, the wise person who is the one who puts my teachings into practice. So it's almost a cue to us to say, hey, pay attention to what's just before this.
Right.
It's how important it is. So you all have read this with your Dinner Church, your group already. Please, take time if you haven't to read this. But we're just going to jump right in. So, Diener, kick us off. Like, what grabs your attention? Like, what do you think on this section?
Yeah, the thing that always stands out to me, like I'm a very practice-based person. I think that like we call them disciplines, or some of it's just like our routine or the things that we do. I know for me, like the older I get, the more I like to have like my rhythms and my routines, especially in the morning. Like it just sets you up.
Yeah.
And the thing that jumps out for me right away when I look at this is when Jesus is saying, anyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice. It's not just hearing them. It's not just doing them once in a while. It's this commitment, right? It's an invitation again to commit to practice these things. And I love that word of like practice, because it doesn't mean you're going to get it right away. It doesn't mean that like it's something you can just quickly pick up and master.
Yeah.
It's ongoing, it's lifelong, but the reward of that is like this solid foundation upon which you are building your life. And when I think about that just in my own life, the days or seasons where I fall out of practicing those things, it shows up in such important ways in my life where I feel frazzled and I feel disconnected, or I'm like, man, why does everything feel like you're going against the grain? And you look back and go, oh, I haven't been doing my rhythms. I haven't been doing those daily practices or disciplines. And so right off the hop, it's just, for me, it's like grounding to know that it's simple, it's challenging, but it's this like daily rhythm of practice these things.
Yeah.
And you're never going to be like, you don't master them, you just keep going. You might become a master, but you're never finished.
Yeah.
That's what I love about it.
Yeah, and everything he says in this section, as we are about to go through it in the coming episodes, it covers all aspects of life.
Yes.
So it's not just put these things and it's like a couple little things. He covers all kinds of things: sexual ethic, what to do in relationships, what to do with enemies, like
Money.
money. Like he
Yeah.
covers
Yeah.
so many of those huge things. So when we're talking about putting them into practice, it's basically you're practicing to align your whole life in the way of Jesus.
Yes.
Right?
Well, what stands out to me when I think about this is you don't know until the storm comes, like how the house, like what the house is built on, right?
that's a
It's
good
like
point.
you don't know if your house will survive the earthquake until the
Until it
earthquake
hits.
comes
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever. And so I'm thinking, it makes me immediately think of, well, it feels personal to me about like the storms of my own life, like the rain and the, like, it's talking about the winds blow and beat against the house, like the beatings, we've all been through the beatings, the
Yeah.
storms. But we know, like, culturally, the last couple of years have been crazy.
Yeah.
And it has been like a revealer of what is going on in our lives, in our homes. How do we feel about our jobs? Why is everyone moving? Well, we hate our house, you know. There's this like revealing of what was solid and what could be shaken up.
Man, I love that. That's so good. Yeah, because when it's tested, the true character or the true
Yeah.
foundation is revealed.
Yeah.
And like you can prepare for it like by building on the rock, but sometimes you don't know, like it's almost like, yeah, it's that image of like what is washed away and what remains. So some of, like, I think it can be a bit of both. It doesn't have to be 100% a collapse or 100% survive.
Yeah.
It's like there's some stuff that gets stripped off.
Few shingles are missing.
Yeah, a few shingles are, I feel that way.
Oh yeah.
I do feel that way.
The door's leaning a little.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, I creak my door like
Yeah.
something's
Yeah.
not right.
Yeah.
and that's where like people talk about apocalypse.
Yeah.
Like apocalypse, like this last couple of years, especially early COVID, the masks, the stay at home, all this crazy stuff. It felt like apocalyptic, but that word means revealing, like the great revealing. And I think the last few years has revealed a lot. It's revealed, like as we're looking in this text, like, is the house on a rock or is the house like actually like it looks really nice until the storm comes and everything falls apart.
Yeah.
And Jesus says that rock is this teaching that
Yeah.
precedes this little story he tells.
Right. Maybe I haven't said that.
That's
Yeah.
great. Like so we were in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina with Habitat for Humanity. A bunch of friends and people from our church went.
Yeah.
We spent all week. You know, Habitat does all the main plan. You just go and they tell you bang this in there. But it was a good kind of time together. So we spent all week. It was sweltering. It was like a July or August. Our work boots were like melting to the, like it was brutal. And at the end of the week, it was like our last day, and the foreman of the whole neighborhood they're building comes and he's looking at what we're doing and he starts measuring stuff and he's like, whoever poured the foundation here, it's all off. The hallway to the bathroom will be about like 6 inches wide if we keep going the way it's going.
Oh no.
Wow.
And so basically the guy said to me, he's like, I don't want to discourage your team. We'll wait till tomorrow, but once they leave, we have to rip everything. It wasn't our fault.
Yeah.
But the foundation was so wrong
Yeah.
that to build
Everything
on
you
it, it would
built
just
on.
continue to, and that's what I thought of when you were talking about this. Like,
Yeah.
oh, the way we put it, it matters so much what we're anchoring into.
Yeah, but it is discouraging, right?
Oh, yeah.
When you've built this thing,
Yeah.
and then you've worked hard. Like
Oh,
what
yeah,
I'm hearing,
we
like you
worked,
sweat
we
it
worked.
out, and then to discover like actually you built it in the wrong direction,
Right.
and like that's such a warning to me of like, you know, you can feel like busyness, but in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
You can feel like your life is full of, I mean, in this case, like religious activity.
Yes.
And then you discover like, actually like most of that was busy work and not actually like real spiritual vibrancy in your life and like connection to Jesus.
I think it's really important to park there for a second. Just acknowledge that you can be doing good work, right?
Yeah.
And putting in effort and doing something that you think is really constructive and really helpful. But if you don't like step back and look, or do it in a community where you have someone who has gone before you and who's kind of done this before and can say,
Oh
actually,
yeah, he can help you catch and check things.
Yeah.
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 if we build this, it's actually not going to work. right? If you just head down, keep going, plugging along, doing what you perceive to be the right thing and the good thing, it might actually come back to bite you in the end. And I think, again, like that's just the invitation that we need to do this in community and to have humility to ask for help and receive correction and think, oh, I thought I was like pouring this foundation correctly and building upon this thing that seemed solid and good.
Right.
But someone's like, oh, actually, like this one miscalculation back here is going to turn into a 6-inch hallway that is good for nothing. And not to be, crass or dramatic, but like sometimes that's the theology we build. We start at a good place and we
At 2 degrees
Yeah.
off, and
And-
they drift out. Yeah.
and then it becomes something that's actually really constrictive and not helpful at all. And so how we build, with whom we build, and how we're able to look back and say, oh, are we doing this right? And have those checks and balances along the way, I think is so important.
Well, and then
Yeah.
you said like the whole group. I'm just picturing like it's a whole group of enthusiastic people all going in the wrong direction, and then like an expert or a wise guide can come in and be like,
Oh, he was a wise
guys,
guy."
I'm a wise guide,
Guide.
Oh, guide.
guide.
He was a little bit, but
But yeah, like that. Like if we're in a group thing, we all think we're going in the right, but without some expertise. And I would say even like if we're talking about thinking and spiritual life,
Yeah.
like a bunch of people who have never really been trained in theology, who all watch something on YouTube and think it's the right way to
And
go.
they're an expert.
And like they're an expert because they saw it on Instagram and TikTok. And
Yeah.
like maybe we should bring in people who have a little bit more training, not because we always need that, but let's start out with a little bit of training and context before we build a whole thing in the wrong way.
yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I wonder, if we switch a little bit,
Let's do it.
Yeah.
so I love at the very end where it says, the crowds were amazed at his teaching, for he taught with real authority, quite unlike their teachers of religious law.
Yeah.
So Jesus is establishing this whole ethic of what it means to be like kingdom people, and the people are amazed at it because it stands, and we'll look at it in the episodes to come,
Yeah.
where Jesus often says, you've heard it said, but I say. Like that will come up a lot for us in this series. He's like reframing their idea of what it means to be the people of God.
Reframing a house.
Yeah,
You're framing that house.
There it is.
There it
and,
is.
and the people are amazed by
Yeah.
it. It's like it stands in stark contrast to what they were used to.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, so then what did they do with that? Obviously, they noticed such a difference, and then what? You know, I always think about the crowd.
Yeah.
To hear something like that, and then I don't know. It's just really interesting because
Yeah.
they notice enough. They're not walking away like that was no big deal. They're like, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
They're amazed at his teaching.
Yeah.
Right. And the nature of Jesus being kind of itinerant. Like it's not like he was building a church there and they
Right.
were going to go there until he retired kind of
Right.
thing. Like he was there and then he was on to the next place. And they were left with this experience and this knowledge that, wow, this is kind of different.
Yeah.
But yeah, like what was generated? Like what was the fruit of those conversations or those people? I think it's always fascinating to, as Eugene Peterson said, like use your biblical imagination to think into the story and beyond and
Yeah.
ask those questions. But
Yeah.
I love too that it promises rain. Coming back to kind of the storm and everything. That oftentimes
When it comes.
we overlook those things and just like the realness of Scripture and Jesus' teaching is like not if but when. And this is the best way to be prepared. It's like when it's going to rain and when these things happen. And I wonder if that was part of the difference, where as before, living religiously and adhering to the law is some sort of like, if this, then this kind of scenario. If you live this way, then you shall be blessed. If you do these things, God will approve of you. And here Jesus is kind of saying like, build your house by doing the correct things, but also know it's not a guarantee that your life is going to be smooth sailing. By living this way, it doesn't guarantee no storms, no rain, no wind. It's like live this way so that when this happens,
You're right.
you're on a firm foundation. I love that there's the
That's good.
promise of goodness and there's the promise of like, yeah, there's going to be some tough stuff. It's just so real. It's real to all of our experiences.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe, any other wonder on your side?
Well, I just wonder, like, then what I think is, like, I wonder what he's going to talk about then in all of these things. So
Right.
what is this rock if we're going to build
Yes.
off? Then I wonder immediately, like, I'm literally, like, now hungry for, like, okay, so, like, what's
Let's
the
get to the
rock?
stuff.
Let's do that because
Yeah.
there's storms coming. What do I do?
Yeah, that's good.
So I'm like, oh, I wonder what's next. As we've said, we're going to get into relationships and money and all. There's divorce and there's so many topics that are covered in this. So I'm like, ooh, I wonder what he's going to say.
Yeah, so that's a perfect place for us just to pause then. Throw it
Yeah.
over to your groups to continue this conversation about what stands out to you, what do you wonder about, and what might that then mean for your group wherever you are across the country here in Canada or different parts around the world as you use this. So thanks for hanging out. We'll be back to continue this conversation on the Sermon on the Mount. All right, peace.